Hello, this is Paul Harris for CGS. Today I'm joined by Daniel Earle, President and CEO of Solaris Resources, which is just about to go public, and to talk about its Warintza project in Ecuador. If you like these videos, please subscribe below. Hello, this is Paul Harris for CGS. Today I'm joined by Daniel Earle, President and CEO of Solaris Resources. Good afternoon, Daniel.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Solaris Resources is currently a private company and on the cusp of becoming a TSXV listed company. Maybe start by telling us a little bit about how and why Solaris was created.
Yeah, so it was created as a spin out from Equinox Gold. Equinox Gold, you may know, is a mid-tier gold producer. They're well on their way to producing over 1 million ounces a year of gold. They'll actually get to that run rate later next year, but then actually achieve that amount of gold production the following year. So that's an all-consuming task, as you might imagine. And what they elected to do with what was seen at the time as a copper portfolio is spin that out, and so their shareholders could continue to participate in it, but to partner with the Augusta Group to surface the value in that portfolio. So the Augusta Group, as you know, has a industry-leading track record of value creation in the mining sector, with a particular focus on exploration and development stage projects. So that track record in history includes over $4.5 billion of exit transactions over the last decade. And so those would include building up the value of and selling companies, including Ventana Gold, as you well know from your focus on Colombia in 2011, for a little over $1.5 billion. Augusta Resource Corp for nearly $700 million in 2014. Co-founding Equinox Gold, which is now over a $3 billion market cap itself. And then most recently selling Arizona Mining in 2018 for a little over $2 billion. So really a best-in-class partner for the job that Equinox envisioned being done with that copper portfolio. And I keep emphasizing copper portfolio because in 2019, after we restarted activities, we actually, based on the data that we then collected, realized that we had a copper and a gold component to the story. So we actually renamed the company Solaris Resources from Solaris Copper on the basis of that new information came in, and we're quite excited about that gold potential as well.
Okay, in addition to the Augusta Group, you've got some sort of pretty big names in your shareholder registry or backing the company. And they've got a history of putting together these companies like Equinox. And here I'm talking about, obviously, Ross Beatty. And he obviously done this before with Pan American Silver, Equinox for gold, and now Solaris for, creating a big copper company.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So Ross Beatty owns about 4% of the company. Equinox, of course, being our largest shareholder, and Ross has a significant ownership stake in Equinox. So indirectly, I suppose he's higher than that, but 4% directly. And then Lucas Lundin owns about 6% of our company. Lundin, both of them are you're talking about two of the most successful people in the mining sector who've made billions and billions of dollars for shareholders over the course of their careers. I suppose the Lundin name and that strategic support is of particular significance in Ecuador because of the job that Lundin has done through Lundin Gold in demonstrating that you can develop a project responsibly, both from a social and environmental perspective, and really bring about a very positive impact on the country and then on the local communities in which the project's located in Ecuador.
Well, I think that's certainly good experience and knowledge to have within your team, because they've done an excellent job there. You yourself, your background is you're a geologist. You were formerly or previously a mining analyst in Toronto. Why the switch of career?
That's right. Yeah. So I had I think a good franchise going, certainly a long career. I spent over a dozen years at a major bank in Canada as a sell-side equity research analyst. And Yeah, and so I could have stayed there for a long time, still into the future, and I left that and a lot of money on the table to come join Solaris. And the reason that I did that is to really maximize the size of investment that I could make in the company. And it's really all about the potential of the portfolio that we have here, and in particular the Warintza project. In addition to the opportunity to work with, Richard Warwick and Ross Beatty and Lucas Lundin.
You didn't fancy becoming an investment banker, obviously. In terms of the chance to work with other people, a lot of the property package was put together by legendary geologist David Lowell, and you got the opportunity to spend some time working with him before he passed away recently. What was that like, and what sort of lessons did you learn from him? What will you be taking forward?
Well, working with him, it's, even at, and he was, when I met him, he was 91. He passed away at 92. But even at that advanced stage, it was absolutely intense being around him because the man is laser focused on the job at hand. He's essentially dedicated his entire career, so more than a 50-year kind of career to to the process of discovery. And obviously the starting point with David is just incredible brilliance, and work ethic and drive and so on. But to put together the kind of track record that he had, there's more to it than that. And I think what I learned was the key to his success when you really study his career in detail is that it's the innovation along the way. And so if you go back to the beginning of his career when he invented the porphyry copper model alongside John Gilbert, so this would have been in the early 60s. This is the porphyry copper model is the dominant deposit type for copper in the world. These deposits account for something like 60% of the world's copper production. And David and John put together the model of concentric rings of alteration that define the deposit class even to this day. So is that original innovation that then sparked this career? He, of course, took that model out into the field, applied it in the most direct way possible to his immediate surroundings in kind of the deserts of Arizona, and then the high deserts of the Andes in Chile and Peru, Argentina, and made a whole series of discoveries of outcropping examples of these alteration systems. So projects like, in Arizona, Kalamazoo, Veco Hills, in Argentina, the great Balo Alhambra deposit, San Cristobal in Chile. And so that was kind of the first stage of his career based on that original invention of that model. Of course, the industry catches on and then goes out and takes advantage of the other opportunities that exist. And so if you want to continue and prolong your career, then you've got to innovate. And that's exactly what he did. So it was actually the second phase of his career that was the most prolific. And this is when he went one step beyond those outcropping porphyry systems and started looking for obscured deposits. And this is when he discovered Escondida. Escondida is by far and away the world's largest copper mine. It's one of the biggest metal mines in the world, period, in any metal. And more than twice the size of the next largest copper mine. And that project had gone through the hands of 5 major companies before David got a hold of it and made the discovery. And the reason that he was able to do that is because he wasn't looking for the porphyry itself. He was looking for the weathered products of the alteration system. So that indirect approach is what yielded that discovery. And then a whole series of discoveries after that. He continued to innovate. And so the next step, and what David was looking for and working on right up until the last week of his life. And I literally got an email on the subject of future discoveries that could be made in porphyry copper in the Andes. A few days before he passed away, were blind discoveries. This is what David viewed as being the future of copper. And if you followed copper, you know that there haven't been many discoveries. There's only one significant discovery in the last 10 years. And so David was very much looking for blind targets to be the solution to the future's, copper supply. And so, yeah, I've probably gone on longer than you would have wanted there, but the man deserves it. It's just such a remarkable career and such a remarkable study to look at that gentleman and to see what can be accomplished with a career of dedication. It's amazing.
Absolutely, I fully agree with you there. And I won't say that the baton's been passed on to you, because that's unfair to sort of load such a legacy onto your shoulders. But obviously, Solaris is the latest incarnation to be taking forward some of his discoveries and hopefully bringing some of his thoughts to fruition. The main project in the portfolio that you have is Warintza in Ecuador. And that's got a resource on it. It's had a resource for a number of years. So why did work stop on that? Why hasn't that been taken forward? And why was that therefore available for Equinox and now Solaris?
Yeah, well, just on your earlier point, you're quite right to say that I won't be able to pick up the baton from David or fill his shoes or what have you. I mean, I simply don't have that, that capability. He was a special and unique person. And, we're never going to be able to do that. But what we can do is we can continue his legacy, and we can, kind of realize and execute on the plan that he put in front of us. And so, like, for example, at Warintza, this was his discovery from the early 2000s. And so what we can do is we can go drill out his discovery, and we can make additional discoveries on that property package and really bring that project to its fruition. And then likewise, with respect to our exploration portfolio, this was a portfolio that David put together. These were his targets for future discoveries. And we can certainly go and test the potential of those projects. And so speaking about, for example, the projects that we have in Chile, Tamarugo, Ricardo, we have J-Feed to Freeport-McMoRan, who's doing deep drilling there, and we'll continue to do drilling as part of a 5-year, $130 million earn-in on that project. Additional projects like Chinal in Chile, and then the projects that we have in Peru, Capricho and Paco Huarco. These were all hand selected by David Lowell. David Lowell has been on the ground, done site visits, and put together exploration plans for us and concepts and targets on those projects, and we can certainly execute on that. So that's the way that we would honor David's legacy, even if we're not able to really continue, to kind of to make discoveries the way that David was. It's just not possible. But we could do the work that he lined up for us. Let's say. You asked the question about why the project was dormant. Well, what happened is David, after he made the discovery at Warintza in 2000, he was able to do a small amount of drilling, and we're talking about less than 7,000 meters of drilling. So by modern porphyry exploration standards, you'd be talking about maybe 5-6 holes equivalent kind of thing. But because he was drilling something that's outcropping right at surface and very, very high grade, it was nevertheless, that was enough drilling to define a small resource, a starter pit, if you will. Which is what we have today in the form of a current 43101, a little over 124 million tons, 0.7 copper equivalent. So quite high grade. That drilling 2001 ended with a breakdown in social relations with the indigenous communities on which the project resides on their lands. And despite numerous attempts, the various companies in which the project resided weren't able to restart kind of a dialogue, let alone come to an agreement with those indigenous communities until 2018. And so in 2018, a gentleman by the name of Federico Velasquez, this is our VP of operations, and he's got a background in CSR. He worked on impact and benefits in BC for the government of BC, and then worked with multinationals, Anglo-American, AltaGas, and so on indigenous relations. He was able to crack the code and get the dialogue restarted with the indigenous communities. And it took about 12 months of kind of dialogue and consensus building to bring them around to entering into a memorandum of understanding. And so that occurred in the middle of 2019, and allowed us to then restart exploration activities on the project. And we haven't stopped there on the CSR side. CSR is something that's always a work in progress, and you're continually building towards a stronger and more resilient relationship. And so we've layered on things like, for example, a government-sponsored consultant, Previa, which is the first one that was done in Ecuador. We think it's a model for others to follow for working with indigenous communities in the countries. You've seen it be successful in other jurisdictions. We're now working on a jointly funded road construction project with the municipality, and then we're working with other levels of government on other initiatives, at the same time as working with our indigenous community partners on strengthening that MOU. And we're in negotiations now at the moment, but we think we may be able to upgrade that to an impact and benefits agreement in the near future, which would really strengthen that alliance that we have, and then also make it appropriate as the project advances from sort of the reconnaissance exploration stage where it is now, through advanced exploration, and then through to development and eventually production. So, like I said, it's just a matter of continually working away and adding strength to these relationships to make sure that you never have the kind of breakdown that David experienced in the early 2000s again.
So an impact and benefits agreement, that's very much the Canadian model of engaging with the First Nations there and sort of bringing that to the indigenous communities in other countries. It sounds like a very smart idea. Another landmark in 2019 that I assume will benefit the company is the fact that Ecuador saw its first copper mine come into production, Mirador. So I guess people in the country are getting used to having a copper mine. The government obviously gets a certain level of understanding about the business from that. So that should tide you well as things progress, shouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think it. I think even more important was really the work that Lundin Gold did in bringing along Fruta del Norte. That's much more the template for us than what Eco Corriente did with respect to Mirador. And I think that Lundin Gold example really provides all the evidence that the country needs and the people need, local communities need. That mining can be done in an inclusive, socially responsible, and environmentally responsible fashion, and that's very much what we embrace at Solaris.
Okay, so you've recently raised about $20 million for your IPO, your imminent IPO. So you've got about $25 million in cash. So what's the work program for this year? How are you going to look to spend that on exploration to advance the project?
Yeah, so 25. Yeah, we have a little over $25 million Canadian now, and then the base program is to do a 3-rig drill program covering about 40,000 meters of drilling, inclusive of a ramp up. We should be able to get that done in the next 12 months with those 3 rigs. And our drilling cost on an all-in basis, including mobilization, demobilization, everything else, is about $300 a meter. So you can do the math on that. It leaves us over the next 12 months after G&A and costs on other projects and so on with a bit of a buffer. So we're not in any desperate need to come back to the market for at least that period of time. But that's the base program. And then obviously, there's a strong desire within the Augusta group to ramp that up and get much more aggressive with additional rigs if the results warrant. So you can look back to, for example, Arizona Mining. When they sold that company to South 32 in 2018, they had something like 18 drill rigs running. Now, that's not within the scope of what we see potential for at Warintza today. But if we're successful in making additional discoveries, then we can certainly, scale things up.
Okay, so it sounds like as and when the listing finally happens, there's going to be a lot of news flow coming through drill results. So finally, to wrap things up, maybe we can sort of touch on, what's the longer term aim or strategy of the company? Where do you and the board, where do you want to take the company to?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I guess I just refer you back to the way that we describe the company. So we say that Solaris is a copper gold growth and discovery story, and that's very much what we're focused on. So we'll immediately be drilling at Warintza Central. That'll start up in a matter of weeks, and we're starting with a modest but high grade resource sitting right at surface at the Warintza Central zone. And so there's certainly multiple times growth potential there. But that's just the very center of a 5 kilometer long trend of outcropping high grade copper mineralization. And within that trend, we certainly feel like we have potential to make additional discoveries. Then, of course, there's the gold at Warintza. We're very excited about the gold potential. We've got a series of anomalies, the largest of which and the first that we'll be working on is called Kaya. And it's to give you an idea of the potential there, it's 4.5 kilometers by 4 kilometers. This is truly elephant country. To give you a reference, something like Detour Lake, which is a 24 million ounce system, has a footprint of 3.5 kilometers by 1.5 kilometers. So we're talking a big target there on the gold side that we'll look to. And if we get lucky, we'll make a discovery there as well. That's Warintza. We've then got a portfolio of properties around that. And we'll certainly be looking to make additional discoveries there in Chile and in Peru, as David would have wanted us to, with essentially what are his targets for future discoveries. So growth at Warintza Central and the discoveries at Warintza, both on the copper and the gold side. And then also we'll be looking at Chile and Peru for potential additional discoveries.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like you can have a lot in your hands, Daniel. So I wish you all the best for the listing and the future exploration program, and look forward to speaking with you again when results come out.
Thanks so much, Paul. Good to chat.